All right, we are going to start a brand new chapter, and it's mostly just on section 5.3 in our book. 5.3 is just chock full of just a lot of things, and so I feel like it needs to be its own chapter. And it deals primarily with the genetic material that we find in cells called DNA. Not only that, it ties into modern genetics, and so we're going to be talking about how DNA codes for instructions to make proteins and how that process happens, and how that ultimately leads to phenotypes in organisms. So take a look at this pattern or relationship here, and what do you see? So when you look at it, you may notice, hey, every time there's a triangle, there's a square underneath it. And every time there's a circle, there's another circle with a dot in it. Hey, look, there's that square. Okay, so it's going to be a triangle. So it seems like triangle matches up with square and circles with circles. And so I keep this in mind as we go through DNA and how it codes for genetic information, because you're going to see a pattern that occurs in DNA. So what we just did there is called a template. If I were to, if you knew that triangles paired up with squares, and I gave you just one half of the information, triangles pair up with squares and circles pair up with circles, you could figure out the other half of this sequence. Same thing with DNA. If you're given one half of the DNA molecule, you can make a copy, a duplicate of what already exists. So the template is the pattern that's followed. It allows you to make a copy, and then what you end up with is a copy, a duplicate, an exact copy of the original template. Okay, so DNA is that information molecule. Okay, it carries information, but it's really proteins that carry out the work. So think of DNA as a blueprint, right? We said that the nucleus holds the instructions for the cell, the blueprint for the cell. And so that's true. And who's reading that blueprint? Who's carrying out the build and the construction of that cell? It's all about the proteins there. So your workers or your builders, they are the proteins. So here's my DNA, and here's my Bob the Builder, the proteins. Proteins are made up of chains of amino acids. This is review. Okay, we talked about the 4 macromolecules of life: carbs, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids. And then we talked about their monomers. What are they made up of? Nucleic acids are made up of nucleotides. Carbohydrates are made up of sugars or monosaccharides. Proteins are made up of amino acids, pearls on a string. So here's DNA. It's coded. We have a template. It has the instructions for which amino acids go where. And when they link together, then you form your protein. So DNA holds the code or information to produce the right proteins. So DNA is a code, all right? Its shape is called the spiral staircase. We'll dive more into DNA's shape later on this chapter. It's made up of nucleotide subunits. Remember, nucleic acids. What's their monomer? It's made up of nucleotides. And there are 4 nucleotides in DNA. Adenine, which we'll just call A, cytosine, which we call C, guanine, G, and thymine, T. And they match complementary to each other. In fact, there's a base pairing rule. A only pairs with T. C only pairs with G. So I tried to show that each nucleotide has a distinctive shape, and they fit together kind of like a lock and key. So you can see how adenine fits in with thymine, guanine fits in with cytosine. To help you remember the base pairing rules, that A pairs with T and C pairs with G, I like to think of all tigers can growl, even though tigers don't really growl, they tough. But A pairs with T, C pairs with G. So using this template, 1/2 of the DNA molecule, can we make a complementary strand? Yes, we can. We know the base pairing rules. A pairs with T, C pairs with G. So I have a G here. G pairs with C, so I can base pair complementary. T pairs with A. Oh, my computer's being a little glitchy here. C pairs with G. T pairs with A. G pairs with C. C pairs with G. T pairs with A. G pairs with C. A pairs with T. And T pairs with A. There we go. Look at that, guys. So the genetic code is actually a triplet. That means 3 nucleotides. You need 3 letters. It will code for 1 amino acid. So 3 nucleotides codes for 1 amino acid, 1 pearl on a pearl necklace, all right, or 1 bead on our protein necklace. Okay, so that's all I want to cover today. I threw a lot at you. This is your assignment. It's also posted in a Google Classroom. So what's the relationship between proteins and amino acids? What makes up the rungs of the DNA ladder? What is the blueprint for a cell? And what is the base pairing rule? Number 2, it says what makes up the rungs of the ladder. Okay, so look, it kind of looks like a ladder here, right? And these are the rungs of a ladder. So what do G, C, A, and T represent, right? What are those? What are they called, right? Okay, so that does it for 5.3A, Part A.